So, hey, good morning. John Caprani here with Mr. Jakub Styrna. This is the first time we've ever met, so I can't call him a friend yet, but hopefully I will by the end of this call. I invited Jakub on to have a conversation with him about how he's got started in marketing and found success as a young guy, basically making it on his own. The reason I decided to invite you on, Jakub, is that you wrote a little bit about your personal story.
Mm,
And I really thought you wrote it very well about your life growing up. So I want to get into that today, what you're doing now, and yeah, who you've learned from, what your skills are. And we're just going to cover all that and just chat about life for the next 40 minutes. Okay.
let's
So
do it.
maybe
Yeah.
awesome. So before we do anything, I'm going to pause this call because my little puppy is barking her head off outside and I got to bring her in
All
the
right.
house. Back from rescuing the postman from my dog. Jakub, let's hear a little bit about you.
Yeah. I'm 21. I come originally from Poland, but I moved to Norway when I was around either 5 or 6 years old. I can't really remember. So I lived in Norway for pretty much my whole life. Um, I feel more Norwegian than I feel Polish. Um, but my family, or first, my dad comes from a rural uh, countryside in Poland, went
Mhm.
under the Soviet Union. He lived in a tiny apartment with nine siblings. My mom comes from a city, so she was a city girl pretty much. I believe it was in Warsaw at first. Then her family moved to a smaller city called Olsztyn. So that's where I am originally from. That's where I was born. Then my dad got a job here in Norway. He lived here alone for around a year. And then after we decided to take the leap and just move here together as a family. And that's how I got here. Um, Now I do marketing. I'm working on a couple of offers for myself. One is to do with publishing. The other one is about outbound for freelancers. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I do a lot of marketing. I obsess over marketing. I love marketing. That's I can't get enough of it. I first learned about marketing when I was 17 years old in high school. We had the choice of picking different subjects. You could pick English, like advanced English. You could pick marketing. You could pick chemistry and like all the other cool stuff. So I picked marketing. Sounded excited. I didn't know what it was. So the first year of that subject, I scored all the top grades in marketing. Absolutely fell in love with it. And then I had the option to take the second year um, of that same subject, so it would be more advanced, etc. So I did it. Again, all the top grades, all exams, essays, tests, whatever. Got really into marketing. Absolutely loved it. And then I always kind of wanted to start my own business, like have something of my own. So I asked my teacher, how can I start a business? Because I already had an idea. It was a computer cleaning service. That would be my business. So I asked her, and she told me that I have to get a marketing degree first. Before that, you can't do anything. You have to get a degree. And I was 18, didn't know anything about entrepreneurship, didn't know how any of that worked. I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. I just wanted a business, and I like marketing. So I had no idea how to get started. I just believed her. So for the next 2 years, all I talked about is how I'm gonna get a degree in marketing, how I'm gonna start a business. I'm super excited. And then I stumbled upon copywriting. So I learned copywriting, did really well in there. Then I decided that I want to learn more because I want to know more about marketing as a whole.
Let me stop you there. So at the point where you're still kind of laboring under this false belief that you need to have a marketing degree before you could even think about being an entrepreneur or starting a business, you found copywriting on the way there. How did you find copywriting?
I stumbled upon Andrew Tate, and then
Oh,
and then he had this course. So I got in there, wanted to check it out, and then it was this thing called copywriting. Never heard about it, and it seemed to me like that's marketing, like that's part of marketing.
hmm
So I was like, okay, this is kind of exciting. So I learned copywriting.
And was he
And
teaching
then
it inside his course?
no, he had like professors and other people like teaching it for him pretty much. So he had
Okay.
like people specifically in each skill that were teaching it that. So I learned copywriting, fell in love with that too, because to me at that time that was like marketing, like that's marketing.
Hmm.
So I started reading a bunch of books on copywriting. I watched a ton of YouTube videos on copywriting, started to buy more courses about copywriting. Um, and then I reached this point where I was like, well, now I know everything there is to know about marketing, because copywriting is all you need. And even to me, I didn't even view myself as a copywriter, but a marketer as a whole, without really knowing like the actual like principles and fundamentals, etc. So I only knew copywriting, but to me, that was marketing. Um, so then I started to invest into different courses, not just copywriting. It was media buying, it was publishing, it was funnels, like everything there was. And then I started to realize that copywriting is just a tiny small fraction of the big pie. I started then my college, or my first year at college. I studied marketing, and then I realized even more that shit, copywriting is just a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the whole massive pie. Um,
So I'm going to stop you there again. Along the way from that period where you first took a marketing class in high school to like where you figured out a bit about copywriting and started to actually
mhm.
like look in that area, had you picked up any clients at that point? Did you start to make some money off of this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I 3 weeks into me, 3 or 4 weeks, sorry, 3 or 4 months into me knowing like copy, I quit my 9 to 5 and I moved to a different city, and I had a couple of retainers and I lived on that income from those retainers, on doing like emails, um, doing like content strategy. So at that point, up until that point, I lived on like the copy thing. That was like my income.
And did you actually find the stuff that you had learned in high school marketing was helpful for that, or was it completely useless to what needed to do to be a good copywriter?
I think it was because it was so long ago and I like forgot quite a bit of it, because it was like vaguely, it wasn't anything specific. It was just like vaguely theory, like vague theory.
Hmm.
Like you have the demographic, remember to have the strategy. Um, when you set objectives, you have to look at that. Like it was just very super general. That was very like vague. It couldn't really be applied to anything specific,
Hmm.
because that like it was just so long ago since I last had about like marketing, right? So yeah, I started university my first year, started to learn more about like the fundamentals, started to apply it to my own copywriting thing, um, and then I decided like, no, I want to learn more. So then Alan Sultanik, I discovered him,
Yeah, he's
joined
great.
his group, learned a ton. It was incredible. Um, then I think I learned in there. In 2 months I learned more than in the past year. Then I discovered another marketer called Ritson.
Who's that?
Huge. Say again.
Say the name, please.
Mark Ritson.
Mark Ritson. Okay, I gotta look him up. Haven't heard of him yet.
Great marketer. So um, that too, learned a ton about marketing. And now we've moved from just knowing copy to just general marketing, outbound publishing, content strategies, like everything about marketing. And now it's not just copy anymore. Now it's like general marketing, pretty much.
Look, my thinking, and I've made like a little drawing about this, and I repost it every few months, is that
Hmm.
the mark like understanding enough, and I'm just talking about direct response marketing, not brand, because that's a whole other massive field of study. But in direct response, like like this, you got this, I see it's like a spear because you are actually going straight for a target. And it's like
Hmm.
the shaft of the spear is your audience. I mean, that's it. Like without that, you got nothing happening. The spearhead is the offer. That's what's going to, pierce the armor. And
Hmm.
then copywriting is like the little sharp tip at the point of the spear. Like that's
Mm.
what's going to initially just open up the wound or
Yeah.
open up whatever you're getting into. But like without all three, you're not getting anywhere. And
Yeah.
I was the same when I got into copy, like magic words, because you're sold into copy as a biz op. I mean, I don't remember myself typing the explicit words how to make money online, but like pretty much everyone I know has that story. Yeah, I typed how to make
Yeah.
money online into Google,
Yeah.
and I ended
Yeah.
up, in some copywriting biz op. Like I bought a Dan Locke course or something like that. And so you get sold on this idea that like copywriting is all you need, but once you're in it for a while, you realize, hey, like sometimes this works great and sometimes it doesn't work at all. And then it's like, okay, what makes the difference? And that's when you start to go back and get the deeper understanding of, okay,
Yeah.
it's the offer, it's the audience, it's the timing. There's so many other aspects to it that are unseen and that
Yeah.
great copywriters know about, but people who are selling copywriting as a biz op, who more often than not tend to not be the great copywriters, don't
Yeah.
tell you that because that doesn't make for an easy, sexy sell.
Yeah. Exactly. And I also think it's because a lot of people learn a skill, they do it for 2 or 3 years, and they
Mm-hmm.
somewhat like feel good and
Yep.
feel good enough to start selling it. And then most of the money they make is just by selling like sort of the skills and experience they've learned to others, right? And they just teach that, and that's where they make the majority of their money.
Yeah.
And
And
so, yeah,
like not to denigrate that because marketing your own course or program is like that's real marketing too. But
yeah,
yeah, when people go from the position of being a practitioner of a skill to just teaching a skill, unless they keep their hand in actively still as a practitioner, they do go stale. There's no doubt about it.
yeah, yeah.
What I thought was interesting and different with you is like pretty much everybody I know in who's a marketer, who's active, like didn't go to college for marketing or they dropped out of college to go all in on one of their offers. Why did you decide, hey, first of all, I'm going to university, and B, I'm not going to do the dropout thing. I'm going to stay in university and finish my degree. What made you think in the other direction? Go against the crowd.
Well, honestly, like at first, I was like, oh, I don't need to learn about this marketing thing in here. I can just buy a course, learn from the
Mm-hmm.
internet. I'm gonna drop out. That's what I'll do. But at the same time, I feel like it was a forced belief on me. Like it wasn't really my own belief, like this dropout thing, like I have to drop out. It didn't really seem like my own belief. I was just everyone around me told me like, "Oh, you don't need a degree, just drop out. You'll learn on the internet, you'll be fine."
Mm-hmm.
But like the stuff I learned in there, it is very interesting, especially when it's stuff that I can actually put into my own business that I have already done, and it is super helpful. And I've already done the first year, and it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it because, like for example, the one of the exams that I had was take an already existing business. It can be a small business, can be a big business, whatever. Do analysis of the business, and then create a new product line, a new service, or a new idea that you think could give growth to the business based on their goals. That
Mm-hmm.
was like one of the exams. And I found it very interesting because I took a direct response agency and I just created a new service for them. And I like made roadmaps, like presentations. Like that's to me, that's fun. I like doing that stuff, right?
Oh,
So it's just helpful to like know the actual fundamentals and like the whole overview of everything, right? So I just think that for a long time I had a belief that wasn't really mine.
I
But
hear you.
now that I like sort of like broke from all the beliefs, I actually had time for myself to like think about it like, okay, should I actually drop out? Why do I even want to drop out in the first place? Why don't I want to drop out? Right. So I just had this conversation with myself, and now I think we're standing on that. I'll just finish the degree and then
Yeah.
just whatever I learn, I put it into action like I have the first year.
So I got two follow-up questions from that.
Mhm.
One, are there, like, you're active, you're actually making a living in marketing while going to university and doing a marketing degree. Is there anybody else in your year or in your group at college that is actually making a living from marketing, or are they all just theoretical students? My first question. Second question is, my guess is that, like, being a university, that they're teaching mainly kind of marketing as it applies to like bigger corporations and brand-based like mass or image marketing, because that's a business at scale, whereas direct response is more for the smaller startup business. So how do they feel about you talking about direct response stuff when you're in tutorials and classes? Do they acknowledge it, or do they not agree with what you have to say?
So the first question is no, I'm the only one.
You only want money. You must be
I'm the
popular.
only one. I'm the only one actually applying this stuff. I have a friend who tried doing it. He asked me like, how can I get into it? And I said like, well, first you need to learn a skill if you want to actually just get started. So I told him like, oh, you can try out with copywriting. He tried it for 2 months and figured it's not for him. He'll just get finished with the degree and then just get a job. So I tried to convince him, but didn't work out. So I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. Um, for the second question, um, a very interesting one actually, because there was one professor. He's also a big entrepreneur. I believe he started a bank, sold the bank, started another bank, sold that bank, started it's something in finance and it's a consulting firm. He still owns it. So he's a big entrepreneur. And after class one day, me and him just started to talk about like direct response marketing, etc. And he's also a big like advocate for direct response for some smaller businesses. We started to talk about like the importance of emails, like running ads, outreach, etc. And then me and another professor one day in class, we had this discussion about direct response in marketing, and um, he also like acknowledged it, like yeah, it's important for smaller businesses. And the cool thing that they do is they're not only like focusing on like the big businesses, but they're also taking examples from like smaller businesses, startups, what startups often do wrong when they're starting, how to like avoid it, laying actual strategies as a small business, etc. So it's both big businesses, medium businesses, startups, small businesses, scaling businesses, right? So, but actually, there's a funny story. When I just got started in marketing, and it was like an introduction to the first year, and it was because I had four professors my first year. So this is professor number three. So I asked him like, will we learn anything about direct response? And he told me like, oh yeah, direct response is great for testing new angles, but that's all it is. It's just testing. So no, we won't really learn that much about it. And to me, that's not really what direct response is. Direct
Mhm.
response is actually getting a direct response from the consumer. So it could be Facebook ads, Google ads, Reels, whatever that calls the consumer to action. So that was the one thing that still sticks to me. That was kind of weird of him saying as a supposed marketer. So
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, things have changed in the last 20 years an awful lot, because it's much more easy for companies to get feedback and to understand the impact of the work they do. But in a lot of cases, there's not the motivation for them to actually even care, because people who work in large institutions who have salaries, oftentimes for them, there's no financial benefit to their campaigns doing better or worse. And they're more looking to kind of win favor and work the political system inside their organizations. And then for the agencies who do outsourced work for bigger companies, again, they don't necessarily want to be accountable for the sales results of their campaigns. And plus, they also know that, I think for in the agency business, especially at a bigger sizes, like churn is just a fact of life. So they are
Hmm.
not always optimizing for client success. Some of them are, the best ones will be, but many will be optimizing for things that it will actually bring more notoriety and what's the word, prestige to the agency. So like having campaigns that are considered transgressive or get newspaper features even if they don't sell much, or having campaigns that win awards and those kinds of things, because they can use that stuff to acquire the next client with.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of agencies that are just focused on getting paid and just getting more money, more money, more money, instead of actually focusing on delivering a solid service or a solid uh, end result, right? Because if you just focus on getting the best result that you can and just improving it by 1% every day, like the clients will come to you eventually, right? So you wouldn't have to worry that much about getting clients. So for example, with me, like yeah, I will do like advertise myself, but I also want to improve my service, and I want to make it as best as physically possible. So for example, currently with the outbound for freelancing offers, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely new offer. I've never really offered something like that. It's a completely new service. I've only done that for myself. So the confidence of me doing it for others, it's not really there, right? I'm not really feeling confident of asking for 3K, 4K, or 5K, doing a service I've never done. So I asked a friend of mine who's a freelancer if I can do it for him for free, so I can get the experience. I can see what needs to be improved. I can see I can get his feedback on what was good, what was bad, etc. Right? And I think if agencies thought like that, we would see much more successful agencies.
It depends on the size of the business. For a smaller business where someone's just starting up or they have a distributed virtual team, there's very low overhead and they can really focus more on product development or on service delivery. Where for bigger agencies, once they become institutions in their own right, once they have expensive, like big city office space and
Mm,
permanent staff on salaries who they have legal obligations to, like that cash flow requirement becomes the all-consuming demand of the business. Like they have to generate a certain amount of cash flow, they have to generate a certain amount of sales growth just to sustain their own organization first before they can even tend to their clients. So there's a different
mm.
set of incentives. But I don't want to get too far off topic. Coming back to you and what you actually do, like what markets are you active in? Are you active in your local market in Norway? Do you look at other European countries? Do you go up to the US? And what kind of stuff do you find clients hire you for these days?
The market, I mean, I've worked with some like local businesses here in Norway,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but the market that I really want to focus on right now is content creators in the self-development for men space. Like
Okay.
that's the market I want to head into. So mindset stuff, helping men just get better, fitness, like that stuff, because that stuff really, really interests me. Because I don't know, I just find it very interesting. Um, because at some point that's sort of what I want to do. That's sort of what I want my brand to be about. And like just helping men just get better as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the market that I'm trying to step into, pretty
Okay.
much.
That market is having a huge explosion in the last couple of years anyway. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
funny, like it's downstream of Andrew Tate as well. For all the shit he gets, like when it comes down to the core message, and he's nobody's sweetheart. Like, he's got things
Hmm.
to say that some people are going to find objectionable, but he's kind of popularized for a lot of young people, a lot of guys in their like late teens and early 20s who would have no knowledge or awareness before. He's popularized the idea of entrepreneurship and doing business.
Mm,
He's popularized like skills like copywriting, which would have been very little known about amongst that demographic before.
yeah.
Um, and then this the whole talk about actually what does it mean to be a man. He's kind of made that conversation, come to the forefront a lot. And there are many differences of opinion on it, but I think there's a lot of things in the popular culture which are conspiring. No, conspiring is the wrong word, which tend to send a message to men that it's okay to not be to be weak or to just chase after simple pleasure, whereas
Mm.
like the best message, the one that's always probably produced the best outcomes for men, is to be responsible and seek to be a responsible person. And
Mm.
that can take different forms at different points in your life, when you're young, when you're married, when you're older. But like, just responsibility is the key thing, I think, of all of those different, ways that people talk about being masculine, whether it's, working out a lot, whether it's being really successful women, being successful in business, being a good father, all those things. The key thing is really like taking responsibility for yourself and your own outcomes in life. And yeah,
Yeah.
you know, um, yeah, Tate has managed to do a lot of popularizing of that. And I see that with some of the clients I work with who are working in that space. And I'm in a couple of these groups for men myself. They're kind of for guys who are older in their 30s and 40s, where there's a different set of problems to younger guys like you have in your 20s. But it's badly needed. You get in these groups and people talk about what's going on in their lives, the challenges they're having in their relationships, in their business, and how they just feel about life, and the knocks that life gives people, how it beats people's confidence down and trying to get their confidence back. And you realize that a lot of men have no opportunity to even, like, the men who are in these groups are actually the lucky ones in some way, because they have a group of people to talk with and they can express themselves and they're aware that there's even a problem. But a lot of guys are just going through life frustrated, angry, don't
Yep.
know what's going on, and they don't even realize that there's a problem, and that they could actually,
Yep.
if they could do some self-examination and look about where their life is not going right, they could take actions to fix it and make themselves happier and more successful. And they just don't even know it, like they're just sleepwalking through.
Yeah. I mean, especially with because I'm still pretty young, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm the biggest thing that I've seen with people my age, with guys my age, is that all of them are just they're not happy. They're just super sad. All of them are extremely angry. There's no real purpose. Very few of them actually work out or try to sustain a healthier way of living, right? And I know that I was very much like that, like 2 years ago or 1.5 year ago or whatever. I was just super sad, super angry, and I didn't know why, right? But then I would lay in my bed for 5 hours a day just scrolling TikTok and then hop on to play video games. And then I would just ask myself, like, why does my life feel so shitty? Right. But then I didn't really have anybody to like show me what was wrong. I didn't have anybody to tell me what I should work on. I didn't have anybody tell me like, oh, you just try and hit the gym. Like you'll feel better. Like just start there. And I promise you, you will feel better. And I think there's this big agenda and it's this disencouragement is sort of growing for like the gym and stuff. And I don't know, to me it just feels like something very, very important to like show other men that don't really have that guidance, that also are like confused, sad, angry, and they don't know why, to like just show them what is wrong and like just help them like get better, pretty much, just grow, if you know what I mean. So yeah.
Yeah, look, I have a 7-year-old son, and this stuff is on my mind a lot. Like, how do I help him grow up to be a man who understands himself and is able
Mm,
to deal with life? And like, one of the key things for me is encouraging him in sports,
mm,
take him to his sports, but not just paying for, like, going to it with him, encouraging him at the training sessions before, after, doing a little bit of one-on-one coaching with him myself, and I volunteer coaching in a soccer team. So he plays some other sports too. And I just see, like, where my boy, he was very shy when he was little. He was like, and he still is little, but he's like, the baby face is gone now. He's a little man and
mhm,
he's starting to come up. Um, how like shy he was. He wouldn't talk to people, anything, like was always hiding behind me or his mom. And just going to football and playing, like the love of the sport,
yeah,
and then encouragement from the coaches teaches him, okay, wow, I'm smart, I'm good at sports, I'm strong, I'm fast, I can think, I can score goals, like just amazing confidence building. And like learning to work in a team where some of the boys are his great friends, some of them he's indifferent to, and some boys he doesn't even like very much. But when it's time to play, they'll all join in the team and know how to play together. And being able to work together with people who are, not always your best friends, is like a very powerful skill. And the learning to be coachable. So all these things have like been really huge. But just to want to get back to what you just said there about like where your life was at a couple of years ago. So that was
Mm.
the age you were about, maybe 17, 18.
Yeah, around that. Yeah.
And like, do you kind of have an understanding of how like it got to that? I mean, were you a sporty kid when you were younger? Or had you had a period where you drifted away from being like doing activities and stuff like that?
Yep.
And how did that actually happen?
So I was, according to my parents, even when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I would always jump on cars or climb a tree or start just running. I was very, very active. I always just liked being active. I played soccer for 9 years, whatever. And I liked just running so much that I played on like the first, because we had two teams. We had the priority team, so that was the first team, and then like the
Hmm.
backup team, that was the second team. I ended up on the first team because I was sprinting so fast and I never stopped sprinting. So I played right back. So I would sprint up, sprint down, sprint up, sprint down, and nobody could really get past me because I would just run all day long. Um, but I played soccer a lot. Um, I also started like lifting the gym. I would always go hiking or swimming or just running or whatever. So I was always like super, super active. And then high school came along. I think either the first or second year of high school, when like the partying started, really started, more drinking, and then somehow I ended up in this environment that was like, training, like, nah, fuck that. Like, you don't need that. Um, and the priorities were wrong. It was more prioritized on like drinking and just having fun. You're young, just live. You don't need to focus that much on your health. Just try moving. Like the priorities weren't really there. So then with time, I slowly got more lazy. I started focusing more on like pleasures, like watching Netflix all day, going out, playing video games, just just focused on having fun pretty much. And that kid that was once active, he wasn't really there, right? I put on a lot of weight. Um, I think I'm 178 high, and
Hmm.
the most heavy that I've been is 84 kilos. That's a lot. So
178. What am I? I'm 175 and I'm like, I'm 89 kg right now. I'm pretty chunky, but I got 20 years on you, so whatever.
Mm, but I mean, I can send you some photos later because it wasn't good. But anyway, and then I started like I just stopped going to the gym, stopped playing soccer, stopped running, stopped everything, right? And I suddenly with that, suddenly I felt more shitty. I felt sadder. I didn't have really any joy in me.
Hmm.
I was super, super low energy at all times. All I wanted it was just go out with the boys and drink
Yeah.
and pick up a chick from the club. Like that's all I wanted. There was no passion, no drive, no energy, nothing. And I couldn't understand why. I just couldn't understand why.
It's crazy. There's so much of like what's popular in the world conspires. And it's interesting talking to you there. I didn't think we were going to have this conversation, but how
Mm,
much of what's popular conspires to like make young guys unsuccessful. I don't want to use the word conspire, but there's so many factors. There's a confluence of factors that really don't help this because there's not much out there for young guys other than go get a job. And it's like, okay, that's
yeah.
good, but like what's beyond that? Like, what does it take to be a successful man these days? And you know, it takes a lot, right? It takes like restraining yourself, like thinking, focusing on your future, thinking about the future, having a goal for your future, um, like wanting more out of life, being prepared to work to get more out of life, being
Yeah.
prepared to actually like your pleasure seeking impulses, which are very strong, especially when you're young, to say no to that and say, actually, I'm going to focus on developing myself.
Mm,
And I mean, the strange part is like the things that you kind of want in terms of um enjoying life, they come anyway. You find your enjoyment in different places when you change your mindset. And I went through all this stuff in my 20s as well. I didn't really figure this out till quite a lot later, till I was about
Mm,
30 when I got my shit together. Like I really kind of mucked around in my 20s a lot. And but like so much out there is telling you just like, oh, just have a good time, live for today.
yeah,
And it's such bullshit. It's like absolutely the worst possible message young guys could
yeah,
get. And
exactly.
I know, like, I'm not going to try and diminish this. Like, young women have a whole different set of problems to face coming up about like expectations over how they should look and how they should act. And I think they're told of a lot of falsehoods as well about like, about promiscuity, and you don't have to, you've got all the time in the world and all this stuff, which is not true either. But that's a kind of different conversation, and it's not really a conversation. We're not living their lives, but I just see it for young guys. Like both for my daughter and my son, I'm super worried, but like we're just trying to navigate that next stage of like that really dangerous period from like 12 to 20, where there's so many
Hmm.
different factors that are saying, oh, just take it easy, just have fun, just focus on
Yeah,
pleasure, go party, and everything will be great. And it won't be great, like, unless you can figure out, hey, I need to steer I'm the captain of my own ship, and I got to steer the ship through some rocky fucking waters,
yeah,
or it's going to be real bad for me, and it's going to be hard to get back going
yeah.
again.
I mean, I have friends that tell me that I work a lot, and I don't really feel that I work a lot. Like
Hmm.
I work, then I go in and like enjoy life, right? So I would go for a walk, I would spend time with my family, I would go box, I would go do whatever, right? But I have my priorities straight. But anyway, people tell me that I work a, like a lot, and I can't understand it because you're in your 20s, you're in college, you should be enjoying life, you should be hanging out with people more, you should be going out more or whatever, right? But at the same time, they also tell me like in your 20s, that's when you have the most energy. That's when you're like at your full energy limit or whatever, your full tank.
Yeah,
So to
absolutely.
me, it doesn't like those two things contradict each other so much because one, they tell me just go out, have fun, do whatever, but two, you have so much energy in your 20s, so don't waste it. So why not put that energy into something meaningful and to something that I actually want to do? Like I want to work. I want to work on my business. I want to scale my business. That's what I focus on the most. So to me, it doesn't make sense to not put that energy into that instead of just going out. Like, yeah, I'll go out once in a while, but I want to focus on the business. That's what I want to do. That's what I
Absolutely.
want to spend my 20s on. And then I can spend 30s, 40s, 50s on whatever else, right?
Absolutely. Look, I maybe have kind of over sort of given it too harsh. I mean, I did useful things in my 20s as well. I traveled a lot. I learned a lot of
Hmm.
valuable skills. I got really into woodworking. I became like a really high level like craftsman with woodworking. So that part
Mm.
was good. But financially, I didn't set myself up in my 20s, and I should have done better. Um, but yeah, absolutely. When you've got, I mean, like now, I mean, I'm 42. Um, like I still have a lot of energy. And then I see other people like my
Mm.
age, and a lot of them don't have much energy left because they've just pursued pleasure or what was easy all their lives. And at this point now, they haven't got much juice left in the tank, where I feel like I still have a lot of juice in the tank. I still see myself
Mm.
being an active guy. I still see myself like my dad is 69. He's going to be 70 in October. He still lifts weights with me twice a week. And I'm like, okay, that's my future. I'm still going to be lifting weights when I'm 70, like my old man is.
Mm.
But a lot of guys are like done in their 30s, like in terms of, like energetically, they're just not there anymore. But
Yeah.
what you're saying is true. Like I take a nap most afternoons for about an hour, and it feels good. I didn't need to do that in my 20s, like, but I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's good. Like for me, that's like high quality self care is like 30-minute, 40-minute nap in the afternoon.
Mm.
Feel amazing afterwards.
Yeah.
But like I didn't need to do that in my 20s. Like I could work, 12, 16 hours, and doing stuff. And I used to do that. Like I, do stuff all day. I'd have a nighttime job in bars and clubs. I'd go and bartend for hours. Or when I was doing woodworking, I'd work on a project for 14, 16 hours and just sleep for a few hours and work again. can't do it that way now. I have to go get some focus more on rest,
Yeah.
managing my energy, and like focus on things like other fitness things like health and nutrition. Whereas in your 20s, you can really just fucking crank it hard. And
Yeah.
and you know, once you take care of the basics like eating well and exercising, you won't suffer too much. So I think you're absolutely right on. Like right now is the time, if you can and you've got the opportunity to build something, to go for it.
Yeah. And at the same time, like you just said, like in your 20s, you could work on for so long and you could just crank it up. But
Mm.
now, I don't know that many like 20-year-olds or people in their 20s who could do that. I know a lot of 20-year-olds or people in general in their 20s who can sleep for the whole afternoon, eat a bunch of McDonald's or whatever, and then just complain about them being like tired or they don't feel like going to work. So I'll just call in sick tomorrow or whatever. And they're like 19, 20, 21, but their energy just isn't there. And at the same time, like you said, with the basics, like eating well, proper sleep, and lifting or just exercising or whatever, I think those three things alone, not that difficult to do. It's pretty common, pretty basic. But once you have those three things down, I think it will just change your life genuinely.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the
yeah,
Pareto principle, right? That's the 80-20. Like there's loads of small optimizations, but
yeah,
like exercise, don't eat loads of shit in boxes, like eat real food.
yeah.
And read some books.
That too. Yeah,
That too.
absolutely.
But even if you don't read books, I mean, because I like was someone who read tons and tons. I used to read 3, 4 books a week when I was younger. Like I realized like that can become in itself a negative habit, like video games and stuff as well. That you're escaping into a fantastical world
Yeah,
of your imagination, whereas more often than not, actually, you know, reading instead of reading 4 books, read one book and then use something in that book to do something like practical.
yeah, yeah,
And that doesn't necessarily have to be a business thing. Like, you know, these days, a lot of my time is spent on marketing business like yours. But like in my 20s, I was reading woodworking books and I was going out and making things with my hands with
yeah,
woodwork. And I was like, oh, I'm actually getting practical application of the things I'm learning, and my skill level is growing, and you know, feeling proud and accomplished. And those things, like people don't realize, I think, before they do them, how much those things lead to the feeling of pride and accomplishment that makes you feel like a bigger person and want to do more with your life and say, okay,
yeah,
what's the next thing I can do?
yeah. I completely agree. It People just don't have this drive, this spark, right? Because
Mhm.
now they're just being told like, oh, I can't wait to go to uni, not for the sake of a degree and getting a job, a good job for most, hopefully, but they're more excited about the partying aspect and the social life, not the future, setting yourself up for success in the future, but more about the actual like partying. There will be so many girls. I can't wait. Oh man, I'm gonna go out every single week. Like that's the stuff that most of my old friends or old buddies were looking most to. Like that's what they were looking most forward to, right? Not like the purpose, drive, and spark or whatever. It was the social life. It was the having fun, having pleasure, whatever, right?
And have you found that since like becoming, you know, somebody who actually has an independent income, doesn't have to have a job, makes a living? I mean, that's one of the best things about doing this marketing and copywriting stuff is that you don't have a job, but yet you still make money. And then when you have your own money to do things with, when you go to social stuff, which is
Yeah,
huge when you're young, without having to spend like 40 to 50 hours a week, you know, in on somebody else's clock. And I think
yeah,
that's for me, like that was the part I found in the end that I said I have to go and be independent as much as I had, you know, like, you know, you can do well in a career. You can do very well. Most people do. And most of the very successful people you meet will be through working in somebody's business or working in a big company or corporation. But in the end, the deciding factor for me was I want to live my life on my clock, not somebody else's clock. So like
yeah.
when that now that you've got that, and you're probably kind of not many people in your group of friends you grew up with have that yet. Have you noticed that people have like fallen by the wayside, or do you get a negative reaction to it from people around you? They feel uncomfortable about it.
I get a ton of like roasts. So for
Okay.
example, if So, for example, if I go to the store, right?
Yeah.
Because right now I'm back home because I live in a different city. But right now I'm visiting my family for the summer. I'm spending time with them. Um, but let's say I go to the store to like grab whatever, and I stumble upon a two old buddies that I haven't talked to in a while, and they like know that I'm doing this entrepreneurship marketing thing. I'll get like, oh look, there's the millionaire. Maybe he can fund us these groceries. Or if I go to the club and I meet some old buddy, um, and they'll ask me like, oh, have you escaped the rat system yet? Like it's those tiny small comments, and they think that because they assume that I'm doing all this for money without actually like really knowing what drives me or what the purpose of this all is or what even started this whole thing. Like they
Hmm.
just think that I care about like the Rolexes and Lambos or whatever. That's where they come in with the small like jokes. But I've heard so many of those now that I don't really care. I have four like really close friends that I stick to always. They know everything. They understand, so I won't hear anything from them. But it's the people that I don't really spend that much time with, that I haven't talked to in a while, that I will stumble upon, that know that I'm doing all this, that will like come in with these small comments. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, at first it really bothered because I couldn't understand why these comments were coming in because they couldn't understand, like they didn't know anything, but yet they just came in with these comments. Now I just ignore it. I don't care. Now I just don't talk about what I do or like the details. I don't share the details. Uh, I'm not just talking openly about everything that is going on. I just tell people like, yeah, it's going well. It's going good. Like that's
Hmm.
it, right?
Yes. So before we wrap, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and that was what I've seen for a lot of people who become entrepreneurial or like do anything that pushes against what sort of mainstream expectations are, or says, I'm not doing the way everyone says to do it, I'm going to go my own way. A
Yeah.
lot of those people tend to be somebody who's had like a really horrible traumatic experience.
Mm,
Have you noticed that? Like people
yeah.
who've grown up with like a very safe, comfortable life where not too much traumatic stuff has happened and they've gone on the straight path can be lovely people. But
Yeah.
what usually forces people to change or to say, actually, most of the like things that you're told, most of the kind of common knowledge or like the mainstream way of doing things, most of it is not necessarily good advice for everyone, or it's not set up for the benefit of the people who are it's set up for the people giving the advice rather than the ones getting the advice. And like,
Yeah.
this is bullshit. I'm going my own way. I want to be free. Like, it's usually a result of some horrible traumatic shit happened to people that they have that
Yeah.
realization. For me, for sure, so like there was several instances like that in my 20s and 30s where I was like you have that moment of clarity. It's like I need to change absolutely everything. But like what one thing that captured my attention with your writing online was you talked about like your early childhood growing up and like because you were born probably just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? When Poland opened up to the west.
Yeah, it was recent. Like when I was born, the Poland still like felt in very much like effect, like the effect of the Soviet Union. So it was still like very much there, sort of.
And you had talked in your story about sort of like how in your youngest years your dad had to go away for a long time to set up the family for like for to migrate and for your future, and that there
Yeah,
was some really tough years, and then but those tough years actually cemented your bond with your family, and how you see that
yeah,
other young people maybe don't care about their families much or not that much paying attention. They're always with their friends,
yeah,
but for you, family is still like your highest value
yeah,
above friends. So do you want
yeah.
to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Let's go. So, I mean, do you want me to just share like some of the more detailed examples?
Um, that if you want to, I think it's more just sort of how you're thinking about this, how you came to this realization, why family is such a priority, and maybe just your thoughts on what I said about the idea of like really traumatic shit is generally what kind of rips the mask off and lets you see what's really going on.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Let's go into it. So, yeah, I'm when I was born, because I was born by accident, right? It wasn't planned.
Hmm.
So my parents just decided, let's do it. Let's get a child. Let's get a son. but that also resulted in my mom not being able to pursue a higher education, and that probably had to result in my dad like quitting the army because my mom was like, I don't want you in the army when we have a son. Like, I just can't do it. So my dad had to quit the army. Mom couldn't get a higher education. I was born. We moved to a different city, city called Gdańsk in
Hmm.
Poland.
Just there a few weeks ago.
Nice, nice. So we lived there. It wasn't going well at all. Ton of struggles. My dad worked at docks. They didn't pay him for 4 months because they were slowly going bankrupt. So my dad had to start stealing like fruits and vegetables, just to just for my mom to make me soup. My so my grandparents find out what was going on. They called us down after like 2 hours of discussions. We moved in with my grandparents, so we lived in my mom's old room. My mom got a grocery store job, and my dad's brother, so my uncle, he actually already lived in Norway, and then he also learned about like the struggles we had in Poland, and he was like, "Hey, look, I work at the docks. I can ask around if they have room for one more." So then my dad got a job here at the docks. Um, so he would be away for 4 or 5 months, be home for a month, be away for 4 or 5 months, home for a month, and it was just like that constantly. Um, so my dad moved, but at that point, I had a little brother. My first, because I have two brothers, my first brother was born. My dad was away, so he missed it actually. He missed the birth. So uh, my mom was basically a single mom for 4 to 5 months. Uh, it was hard, right? She was a single mom for 4 to 5 months. At some point, we decided to let's just move to Norway. We'll just have a better life there. Our sons will get better, etc., etc., etc. But we didn't have any family here. It was just us and the uncle, nobody else. I didn't know anyone here, neither did my parents. Didn't speak any Norwegian, nothing. So it was just us. We had to like stick together. Um, in the early years, there was still like financial struggle, even to this day. Like sometimes there is. That's like what drives me the most, like the struggles that they have. But anyway, um, so we didn't really have any like friends. We didn't really like have anybody to like rely on other than ourselves. So it was just always us at school. Even if there was some kid bullying me or whatever, I couldn't really go to the teacher because I didn't know the language, didn't have any friends that could like back me up. I didn't know anyone or the language. So I had like mom or dad was like the only ones that I could lean onto and get support from, right? Um, and the with more time, I started speaking the language really well. Um, but my parents, because they're pretty old, they found it hard to learn a completely new language, right? So they still struggle with the language a bit. So they have to like ask me because they can't just go to a random friend and ask for help. They came to me, right? So it was always just like us for a decent amount of time. It was just us, right? Get help, support each other, basically. So the stuff that I've been through with my family, I haven't been through that sort of like hardship with anybody else other than my family, right? And then what drives me like the most, what's started this whole thing, was just I always was tired of seeing like my parents struggle financially. So the idea of me just having my own business one day, getting rich and like retiring and providing for them, it has always been there, right? But I just didn't know how to get there. I had no clue. But I always knew it's gonna happen eventually. And then some heartbreaks came along, more like situations that sparked like, all right, I just gotta get my shit straight, right? So that idea, that big idea, it was always there, but the thought of action to do it now, it wasn't there, or the way of getting there, I didn't know about it. I just didn't know how to get started, right? So
Hmm.
that's why I value my family so much before anything else. It's because we've been through so much shit together and we stuck together, right? So, yeah.
That's great. No, when I was in my 20s, I felt that same. It's very much in Ireland. There's a lot of cultural pressure, which says like, oh, just spend time with friends and go out and have a social life. Irish people are very social, as you probably know.
Mm,
But like in Irish culture, there's this huge thing about like people will just spend a lot of time with their friends, and then in people. People were always very family oriented here, and then in recent years, it's been more of this social pressure with young people of like, forget about your family. It's all about friends. Friends are the family you choose. And I kind of fell into believing that shit for a few years. And then,
mm,
I come to the point where I got married and had my own kids, and I was like, oh, that's a whole
mm,
absolute fucking bullshit. Like,
mm.
your family is your family, like your blood is your blood. And like
Yeah,
these are the people who take care of you. And these are the people who you must take care of when you produce the next generation. And
yeah,
like, and it's absolutely like a deep like spiritual level responsibility to do that. And everything else is, friends are important, of course. You have to behave honorably towards others, you treat your friends well, but when it comes down to it, like, your blood is what matters.
yeah. I mean, my mom works in um what's the name in English? It's like a home for like elder people, like help the
Yeah,
elder home.
retirement home.
Yes, thank you. So my mom works there, and so she helps a lot of like elder people, and some of these stories, man, that she comes home to or with is obviously she can't say any names, right? It all has to be anonymous, but there are elder people that are like fathers or mothers or whatever, and the family just sort of put them in the elder home and
Hmm.
just fucked off, and like, oh yeah, they'll be taken care of. We don't really have to think about them that much. And some of them, like some of the elder people there, they don't get a phone call on like Christmas, for example, or they'll get a visit once a year for like an hour because now the daughter has like a husband and they're off to somewhere. Like it sort of feels that a lot of the elders just get sort of lost in that elder home, right? They just get forgotten because, oh, they're in the elder home. It's all good. We don't really have to think that much about it. So I think that's also a big fear of mine. I don't want to treat my parents like that when they're at the old age. Like I'm not going to do that. Like family to me always comes first. And not just my mom, dad, brothers, like grandparents too, uncles too, whatever. Like family to me matters a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's like, I don't think about it explicitly for this reason, but like the kind of situation where the older person gets dumped in the old person's home and not looked after, if maybe they're looked after financially, but they're not emotionally looked after in their older years
Yeah.
by their family members. And like that, I mean, you don't want to judge other people's situations, but you know that situation is that there's the bond has not been kept strong between
Yeah.
them and the generation below. Because if I look at, like, in my own family, like my grandmother, for example, like she like, she really did actually need to go into retirement home. She was like kind of crazy. Like, she was a really lovely woman, but like she liked to drink, and she had like several strokes and like crazy falls,
Mm.
and like she ended up in a wheelchair towards the end of her life when she really didn't need to be. But she got to 92, and people were like, you know what, let Granny have her glass of wine. Like, you know what, it's totally fine. It is what
Mm.
it is. She earned it. She's like, she had like 9 kids and like has 40 grandchildren or something. Like, so she's done her bit for society.
Okay.
But like, she really should have been in like retirement home. But like, all of her kids like made efforts while she was alive to, like,
Yeah.
some contributed money, some who didn't have the money contributed their time, but everyone made an effort to help her be able to live in her own home till the day she died, which was like her wish. And to make sure that she was looked after, like, that there was always fresh food in the fridge, that there was always clean clothes to wear, that her house was neat and tidy, and that whatever, state like benefits and pension things and paperwork and those kinds of stuff were done for her. And like, that was all
Hmm.
of her, like, kids. And that was because even though she wasn't the easiest person in the world to live with, she was kind of cranky. She had a few like, quirks in her personality, but like the bond was still strong.
Yeah.
So it's like part of what I think about is like, for me now, it's like growing up is like explicitly is that my kids is like, I don't have like my primary goal as a parent is like, I want these kids to get to age 18 with happy memories of childhood. That happy memories of childhood does not mean they, does not mean a trip to Disneyland. That's nice if you can do it, but it doesn't, that's not what happy memories of childhood is. It's like feeling loved, feeling safe, feeling secure. And then feeling happy, and happy memories does not necessarily mean you tell them they're wonderful all the time. Like when they do ill
Yeah.
shit, you have to like discipline them and say, no, put
Yeah.
them back on the right path. And it doesn't mean like a soft life where they just get to play video games and goof off every day. Like they have to help with laundry, they have to do dishes, they have
Yeah.
to show up for their sports practice on time, that kind of stuff. But like the happiness is there because they have structure in their life, they have order, they know they are loved, and they know that they are safe to express themselves. And if I can just get them to 18 with those happy memories of childhood, then I've done my job to raise them, and then it's up to them to make a good life for themselves and keep that bond between the generations. But for those, and I don't want to end on a sad note, but you were right what you said about your mom. These older people, something has gone wrong during the time they were raising their families, that the bond got broken.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what it is either, but I absolutely agree with you. Like even now with some of my friends, like it was one example. I was going. This is quite a bit of this is some time ago now, but I was going to Poland to visit my family, and it was during a normal school year. It was nothing special. It wasn't the summer. It wasn't the holidays. Whatever. I just wanted to like see my grandparents again. So I booked a flight to Poland for like a week and a half or whatever. And then one of my friends asked me like, are you joining the clubs this weekend? And I said, no, I'm going to Poland. And he asked me like, oh, why? And I said, I don't know. I just want to like visit my grandparents. And then the friend told me like, oh, I haven't seen my grandma in like 5 years. And I said, oh, like why? And then this is kind of sad, but he replied with, I just don't want to drive for 1.5 hours to this city to visit her. It just takes too much time. So I'm willing to take 1.5 weeks out of the school year just to travel. What is it? Like almost, I'm not sure how many kilometers, but I think like 1,500 to like visit my grandparents, but he has his grandparents like right here, like pretty much right next to it. I would like, I don't know, man. I just find it sad, like the current state of like the bonds between certain families, and yeah. I mean, maybe it's just because I have a different worldview and I have different experiences, but still.
Hey, well, look, I don't want to leave this on a sad note, so I just want to say, like, the reason I reached out to you to have this conversation was that, like, I just saw like how you're talking about your values, you talk about your family, and that you are, you're young, you're ambitious, you're trying to make something for yourself. You are
Mm,
somebody who prioritizes your freedom, and you're looking after your health, your fitness, and just love to see young people with that mindset. And just
mm,
particularly the fact that you were so family oriented and like so much respect for your mom and dad. I thought that's really admirable, and you don't see enough of that right now. So
thank
I
you.
think you're sharing a very positive message. And yeah, I just wanted to support that. And I'm really glad to have this conversation with you today, Jacob. So
Yeah,
before
thank
we
you.
wrap up, do you have any final thoughts? Do you want to let people know? I'll share your Twitter handle and stuff in the description below the video, but do you have anything you want to let people know about that you're doing, or anything, else you want to say before we wrap?
I don't think so. No, I think we covered quite a bit of good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't expect to kind of get into deeper territory today, but I'm glad we did. So thank you
Yeah,
very much for the
same,
conversation.
same.
And I'm going to stop the recording now.
All right, thank you.